Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and every week or so I write a newsletter all about international radio trends and stuff, and you may get it in your email, but this is the podcast version where I read it out without any edits because I'm lazy. And greetings from a rather soggy Brisbane. It's been raining non-stop for quite some time, and there is widespread flooding throughout Australia's third largest city. I had a beautiful picture of a local road closure, and of course I had the radio on. The ABC is well used to emergency broadcasting, and the playbook for them is very much based on quiet, calm, unsensationalized information. A number of local radio stations simulcast the same output, which at the time I tuned in was being ably and calmly hosted by Kathy Schnitzling, who, as far as I can see, is executive producer of an ABC TV news programme, Landline, and does swing work at ABC Radio Brisbane, and produced by Kat Davidson. It was certainly the place to get information, many public officials giving information about their areas and responsibilities. 4BC was an afterthought to me, mainly because when I moved here, 4BC was just a rebroadcast of a Sydney radio station. And I think of it as such still, even though it's now local from 5:30 a.m. to 7 p.m, excepting mid-mornings. Now, when I tuned in on Saturday afternoon expecting some sports ball programme, it was a live and well-balanced local show with plenty of public officials, yes, but also many ordinary people on the ground. Jingles announced a special broadcast showing a bit of forethought, and when I tuned in, Jason Dacey was on air, produced by Olivia Wilbury. 4BC's output benefited from being more focused on Brisbane rather than having to cover adjoining broadcast areas. On 4BC, officials were on air, but so too was more colour from local people and a little less focus on towns 6 hours drive away. My initial reaction to overlook the station was a reminder that if you change the station, you need to focus on the marketing for a lot longer than you think. The ABC was a good, calming listen, if quite strange to me, having never heard that information-heavy format before. I can absolutely see a place for information radio like this. For me, though, I think 4BC was a warmer, more human listen, for connection rather than just information. And it was also delightful to hear that Frank Walker from National Tiles is still alive and well. On the TV, while the ABC is statewide, the commercial channels aren't, so they're to their benefit in this instance. It's a good job I know what I'm reading here, isn't it? Let me try that again. On the TV, while the ABC is statewide, the commercial channels aren't. So to their benefit in this instance, I tuned into 9 News around midday to see Alison Ariotti and Jonathan Upton crossing to a number of live feeds from across the area, including Gary Youngberry, the weather broadcaster. Cameras were soaking and repeatedly being wiped down on screen. Some reporters were stuck trying to travel to stories, but it was an excellent service. I think they were on for at least 7 hours. Quite disappointing, though, that the EPG on the telly told potential viewers that it was women's football, which I probably would not have tuned into. But I do feel for ABC Radio Brisbane, though. The studios are next to the river because some bright person decided to build them there. And our emergency broadcaster was evacuated on Saturday night. I gather that for a while the station was being panelled elsewhere with presenters and producers doing their jobs from home. For the telly, we were actually getting our local news being read by newsreaders in Perth. After the last 2 years, though, at least they've had plenty of practice at working from home. So I wished them luck. Elsewhere, if you want a long-term graph showing radio ad revenue market share since 1930, then I linked to one in the show notes and my newsletter, james.crid.land. I linked to one posted by Benedict Evans. It's fascinating, actually, how consistently radio has taken the same market share since pretty well 1930. Really interesting to see. Congratulations to Kerry Jones on the launch of Alfred, which went live, a 24-hour speech radio station for a market of under 12,000 people. It's quite a fascinating listen. You should go and have a try of that. I was also in the London Daily Telegraph talking about radio and how it isn't yet dead, which was quite a nice piece. I linked to some news about podcasts, which seem to do twice as well for 13 to 24s as talk radio. which is a wake-up call, I think, probably a wake-up call around the type of content that you hear on talk radio, particularly in the US. Radio Player was looking for a technical solutions manager in London. Who knows? They may have filled that role now, but if they haven't, you'll find that linked, james.crid.land. There's an episode of 20,000 Hertz all about UK pirate radio this week. So if that floats your boat, see what I did there? Then you can go and have a listen to that. I also linked to something from Alfred about how many radio stations you can fit onto a DAB multiplex. I'm not sure that's something you should be proud of, Ash, to be honest. But I think it's a nice idea. Talk radio is becoming an old person's thing, Stephen Goldstein says, even more so than radio overall. It's worth a peek at that. Thank you also to Radio World for watching my keynote for the EBU and reporting on it, which was nice. I've never understood people deliberately making content for a third-party platform like Facebook or Instagram, but I linked to a Twitter thread which is quite the explanation as to why it's a bad thing. Essentially, Facebook changed some algorithms and put lots of people out of work. It's great until it isn't. It's worth a read. Also worth a read are the online radio figures for the Netherlands all in one place. It'd be lovely to see the equivalent for the UK or Australia, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. And impressive streaming figure increases for Australia's 4BC, 3AW, 2GB, 9.2 million hours, 9.3 million streams. So the average per stream is 1 hour duration, which is quite impressive. Good to see those numbers in a press release. You'll find that linked, james.craig.land. Infinite Dial 2022 for South Africa has come out, which is showing fast changes in the South African metro market. Podcast reach has doubled in 2 years, which is quite a thing. Radio is now bigger than linear TV for 18 to 34s in the US. Which I suspect is a definition thing, but it certainly points to the misplaced primacy of live. And still, we hear radio people excited to point out that their stations are live. No one cares. No one cares. And finally, congratulations to Irish podcasters, the two Johnnies, who became Spotify exclusives in June. They began hosting the national RTE 2FM afternoon drive show on Monday of the week that I wrote this. On Wednesday, they published a crude and vulgar video on social media and were promptly suspended from the RTE just after 3 days on the air. Oops. Probably a mistake there. Thank you to Richard Hilton, James Masterton and Brun Audio Consulting for your ongoing support of my newsletter and a podcast. I'm very grateful to you. If you'd like to support my work in any way, you can buy me a coffee. Become a member to give regularly, or just give a one-off coffee or $5. Buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland. Or if you are listening on a new podcast app, then hit that boost button now. That would be very generous and kind of you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, newpodcastapps.com. My professional website is at james.cridland.net, about who I am and what I do and whether I can help you further. And I'm really pleased to be speaking again. I'll be at Podcast Movement in Los Angeles in March, also speaking at Radio Canada's Audio conference in March as well. Also at Radio Days Europe in Malmö in Sweden in May. I've got no idea how you pronounce it. The podcast show London in May and Canadian Music Week in June. Very much looking forward to getting back on the road. I will catch you next week and keep listening.